I am honored to introduce Linda Darling-Hammond, Charles E. Ducommun, Professor of Education, Stanford Graduate School of Education and President and CEO of Learning Policy Institute. Welcome.
I'm actually going to speak from over here and use a couple of notes. I want to welcome you to the United States of America and the Republic of California. I actually learned this morning that there is a serious funded movement to secede from the United States that has just been launched in California. It would be a long slog. And I also learned that California has tried to secede 200 times in the last 200 years, so something like that. But you've arrived here at a remarkable and challenging time for our country. Many of us are still stunned by the results of our national election. Just 2 days ago, there are significant levels of fear on the part of and on behalf of many families and children who were described by our new president in hostile and threatening terms. So you have seen the fierce debates, and many of you are from countries that have also been roiled by political uncertainty. That is the result of our fast-changing world and its unequal access to resources and the changing face of the planet, including climate change, including a growing number of natural disasters, as well as the conflicts that exist across the globe. And that often manifests in fear and isolationism and efforts to exclude, and we've seen in many, many countries the political results of that anxiety that is gripping people around the world. You've also seen this week a peaceful transition of power, a lot of national soul searching that is beginning, and many, many efforts to reaffirm who we are as Americans. So I think there is always that American spirit to go to the next level, to tackle the challenges that are before us. The young people you saw this morning and others who are being educated in that way are going to be part of the capacity that we have to deal with these kinds of problems. The same is true in your countries. The young people who are being trained in that way to think about problem solving, to be initiators and creators are going to be essential. This world we live in demands more of us as educators, and in many ways depends on what we do to help prepare people for this very uncertain and very rapidly changing world that we are in. So there are new expectations of learning. I know that in the United States and elsewhere, those kinds of expectations of learning are being articulated. Some people call them 21st century skills. Some people call them deeper learning, higher order skills. But this expectation that people will be needing to collaborate and communicate and problem solve and analyze and synthesize and learn to learn is part of what's shaping educational conversations and policies around the globe. The economy of the world is changing. Whatever can be digitized and automated will be. You may have seen, or maybe you will see while you're here in Silicon Valley, driverless cars that are wandering around Google. You will see many, many other, and have probably experienced in your own countries, efforts to take routine tasks and turn them into things that are managed by computers or robots. And so people who used to do that work are scared, anxious, wondering what they will do. The education that they get access to, which is for the thinking curriculum that is needed for a rapidly changing knowledge world, is what's really at stake. Is what was at stake in this election in the US. It is what is at stake in your own countries in many, many regards. Now, I have spent many years as a professor at Stanford University, right up the road. So I do not like to quote people from Cal Berkeley And I'm sure that there's always somebody from Berkeley in the room. Is Cal in the room? We're on the right side of the bay here. There are these two professors at Berkeley who've been doing these studies about the growth of knowledge in the world. And I have to give them credit because it's really mind-shattering work. And they found in one of their studies that there was more new knowledge created in the world between 1999 and 2003 than in the entire history of the world preceding. Think about that for a moment. Knowledge is expanding now at an exponential rate. It's not just incrementally growing. Technology knowledge is doubling every 11 months. And perhaps by the time you leave here, it will be doubling every 10 months. It is accelerating at a very rapid pace. 20, 30 years ago, if you ask the Fortune 500 companies in this country, what are the top skills you're seeking? The top 3 skills were reading, writing, and arithmetic. If you ask them now, the top skills are interpersonal skills, teamwork, collaboration, problem solving. Reading, writing, and arithmetic are further down the list. They're still there, but that's what really drives things. Here at Google, I'm told by the vice president of human resources who did the studies that they used to collect a lot of data about test scores and transcripts and grade point averages of employees and try to figure out how to get the best talent here. And then they studied how did that relate to the performance here in this kind of work on this kind of a job. And there was no correlation. And in fact, what they look for in hiring employees is learning ability. Your ability to come in and tackle a new problem, find the information and the resources yourself, put it together with other information, know what's relevant, what's not relevant, how to weigh and balance it, work with others to collaborate, to design a solution, design a product, design the next part of the process that is needed to create what the goal is. And so those are the new academic skills. And creativity and analysis and problem solving and learning to learn are at the core of those expectations for learning. That has huge implications for how we design schools and how we design educational systems. In addition to the academic skills, social emotional skills matter greatly. The ability to have a growth mindset that says when I am tackling a problem and it's challenging, I know that if I keep putting forth effort in the right way, I will be able to continue to learn. The resilience that's needed to confront obstacles and find ways around them. The resourcefulness that's needed to find solutions where they're not right in front of your nose. The collaboration, the self-awareness, the positive interactions, and a sense of social responsibility. And we're finding in our studies here in the US, and that's also true in some research internationally, that these skills actually matter more for college success and career success than the academic skills. Not to say that academics don't matter, but these abilities are what allow you to translate what you know into the ability to succeed, particularly in a world like the one that we are now in. So we're at a moment, historically, where our survival as a species depends on this kind of learning. Because we have a ticking clock with respect to the way in which the resources of the world are being used. We're actually at a moment where our young people will have to work with knowledge that hasn't been discovered yet, using technologies that haven't been invented yet, to solve major problems that we have not managed to solve around living peaceably together, allocating and growing the resources of the world, halting the kind of climate change that is going to cause a growing number of disasters, basically creating a planet that works for all of us. And individuals and societies that do not succeed at this kind of education will be unable to survive and to thrive. So how do we create schools that can meet these needs? I think there are 4 things that are really important. We've seen schools, and many of you have developed such schools. And in many countries, this kind of education exists in a few places on the margin, In some other places, it is beginning to become the entire system. So this question of scale is also important. It's not enough to create a few little oases, because all of our citizens have to be able to think and behave in these ways. First, I would say that schools need to be grounded in values as much as they are grounded in knowledge. I worked to create a school in a nearby community, East Palo Alto, which across the highway from Palo Alto. It could not be more different. It's one of the lowest income communities in California, mostly new immigrant populations, where there has been a lot of violence. At one point, it was declared the murder capital of the United States because of the rate of violence, which still goes on. Substance abuse, gangs, and other things are there in the community. And in that school, we turned around what had been a 2/3 dropout rate for young people from that community to a 90% graduation rate, with 90% of the kids able to be accepted to college. But at the core of it was creating a strong value system. So in every assignment, on every class, in every grade, students would be evaluated on and taught how to engage in personal responsibility, social responsibility, helping others, being a good collaborator, investing in the community and playing their role, critical and creative thinking, communication, and application of knowledge. And over the course of 4 years, kids could watch their growth, track it, and the school was structured for relationships, so that when things would happen on the outside world, there was an adult, including an advisor who would stay with them for 4 years, who was there to help them grow developmentally as individuals and manage both their academic lives and their social surroundings. Teaching skills of conflict resolution explicitly, skills of personal awareness. Those kinds of values are going to be essential for the actualization of young people, but also for their ability to help us create the world that we need to be creating. Second, schools need to be centered around inquiry and investigation. And it is how people intrinsically learn. You know, babies start out just looking around, inquiring, investigating, experimenting. They try something, they see what you do. They see how the world responds. They do it again and see if the same thing happens. Everything that has been invented in human history came about because human beings are intrinsically investigators, right? Every recipe we've developed, came about because some human being, probably accidentally, threw something in the fire. I don't know who invented fried foods, but that was like a great invention. Like, oh wow, if I put it in the oil and it and let's try that again. Everything we have, not just the driverless car, everything we have in our cultures came because human beings are inquiring, investigating, experimenting creatures. And our schools have to support that natural approach to learning, because the future is all about taking what we know and then applying it in these ways, not memorizing and regurgitating. Why do that when you have the Library of Congress at your fingertips via Google? And so the whole framework in the last century for taking what we know, dividing it up into the 12 years of school or however many years there may be, and asking kids to memorize it and spit it back is not going to be the framework that will allow us to create avid, motivated, effective learners in the future. We do have to have facts and content. We have to figure out how to organize the bodies of knowledge in ways that people can get a framework in which they can then build additional knowledge. And not just be stuck with the facts that have been handed to them. That means authentic tasks and projects that really explore and use content, but also are developing these habits of mind for inquiry and the learning to learn. The third part of this is evaluating those activities through authentic assessments that really ask students to demonstrate their knowledge, as you saw this morning over at the Khan Academy. Technology can be both a tool for this kind of inquiry and for this kind of assessment. one of the things we found in terms of the use of technology and its effectiveness is that it is most useful in producing greater achievement when students are using it for problem solving, for creating their own products and projects in an interactive way that has the right blend of teachers and peers interacting with it. In fact, we see little or no gain in the use of technology when kids are just stuck in front of a computer, which is trying to convey information to them like a workbook or a book would do. We've had lots of large randomized trials of studies like that in the US, and there has been no gain in achievement from that. But integrating technology into this human activity of investigating and experimenting, of collaborating and discussing, of building and developing does create huge gains in performance. And so we also need that to happen in our assessments. In the United States, this means we have to move beyond the multiple choice tests that were a modern invention in 1950, but are really holding us back today. In many other countries, there has been enormous movement on a productive assessment. I think of the work that's going on in Singapore, for example, where in high school, in the assessment system, in the 10th grade, kids are doing design projects where they have a problem, they have to solve the problem, invent a product, try it out, test it, make sure that it works, revise it. All of this is followed with a research journal where you keep track of the steps that you undertook. It's all put together into a product that teachers score as part of the assessment system. In science, investigations are designed and conducted in the same way. There are a set of standards for those investigations. The topics can be chosen by students, but the framework is a standardized examination framework. Students do this over and over and over again. Teachers score those. They become knowledgeable about the standards and this kind of inquiry instruction because it's embedded in what's going on. It's not like testing is some other artificial thing over here that has nothing to do with real learning that you do over there. And you can see how the scientists and technologists of the future develop when they're in a system which supports that kind of learning and that kind of assessment of learning. Many of you have seen this in the International Baccalaureate program around the world, which in some ways also offers a gold standard for that kind of assessment. And finally, the fourth area is all of this has to be supported by expert teaching. And as we have more and more diverse students, as all of our societies are trying to expand access, trying to expand equity, trying to be sure that it's not just delivering the curriculum or getting through the book, but it's actually enabling students to learn to high standards, then teachers have to be so much more expert than in an era where all their job was to kind of follow through the chapters in the book. How do we do that? Well, we have great models of very, very powerful teacher education, pre-service preparation in a number of countries in the world. I think you talked about Finland yesterday, and that is one place that offers a very, very productive model where teachers basically learn in a setting that's very much like the way doctors are prepared. In a model school, like a teaching hospital is attached to the medical school all over the world, teachers are prepared in model schools or partner schools, which are connected to universities where their coursework both engages them in research, learning what research tells them about effective practice, but also doing research about their practice, and also practicing with children, with other teachers, in a very, very organized and systematic way to develop these skills. Also, part of that training is that they focus quite a lot on the needs of special learners, learners who learn in different ways. And the theory is that you can become expert in teaching kids who may struggle to learn, it will carry over to all the other children because you'll have that diagnostic frame of reference. And in fact, that seems to have proved true. That was the big bet in Finland back in the 1970s, long before other countries were requiring a master's degree to become a teacher. It's a 2-year master's on top of the undergraduate program. They were plugging along. They don't have any external examinations of the sort many countries have, so they didn't really know what was happening with achievement until PISA came out in 2000. And as I'm told by some of my Finnish friends, their major goal was to be ahead of the Swedes. But they surpassed that and came out as one of the top performing countries in the world, and attributed much of that to this deep, deep training of their teachers through scholarship and inquiry and so on. You can see this as well in places like Shanghai, where teachers are very deeply involved in action research. Always, there's time in the day for groups of teachers to collaborate on planning lessons, to do lesson study, to polish their lessons together, try them out, see the results, refine them, and so on, but also to do research on pedagogies of different kinds that they can then write about, share with other teachers in research journals. In fact, something like 75% of teachers in Shanghai have published at least one teaching research article in journals that circulate among teachers. And they use collaboration and inquiry and investigation as a vehicle. We know from research that that kind of work increases teachers' efficacy, increases their effectiveness, and allows them to move further on 21st century practice. Technology can play a role here also. Online networks of teachers, international networks. There's a network that I'm connected to that is among teacher education institutions around the globe, sharing practices, as well as teachers themselves and school leaders doing so. We are stronger together. So the respect for teaching is at the heart of successful education systems. In successful 21st century systems, we should be able to move beyond that old saying that those who can do and those who can't teach, to an understanding that those who can do and those who understand teach, and those who can teach and those who can't go into a less significant line of work. I want to kind of leave you with the words of John Dewey, who plagiarized in advance everything I ever thought of. So, and you'll resonate with this because I know it is the work that you are committed to. What the best and wisest parent wants for his or her child, that must the community want for all of its children. Any other goal is narrow and unlovely, and acted upon, it destroys our democracy. Together, we must work to share our knowledge to create education systems that are what the best and wisest parent wants for all of our children. Thank you.